I watched in horror as the crystal water closed over my head. The laughter from the poolside echoed underwater as I sank deeper. They thought it was hilarious. Until my husband's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. What happened next changed everything for these entitled bullies forever. If you've ever been humiliated in front of others, this story will shock you. Stay until the end to see how one moment of cruelty led to the most satisfying revenge. Don't forget to subscribe for more incredible, real-life stories that will leave you speechless. Hi, I'm Allison and I need to tell you about the day my entire world changed at a charity event. It was a day that started with me feeling small and invisible, but ended with me witnessing the most incredible display of justice I've ever seen. This story still gives me chills when I think about it. Let me start from the beginning. I've always been what you'd call a simple woman. I prefer quiet evenings at home over fancy parties, comfortable clothes over designer dresses, and genuine conversations over small talk. 2 years ago, I married Henry, a man I fell in love with not because of his wealth, but because of his kindness and the way he made me laugh. I had no idea just how wealthy he was until after we were married. Henry is a businessman, but I never really understood the full extent of his influence. He owned several companies, had investments everywhere, and apparently had connections I couldn't even imagine. But, to me, he was just the man who brought me coffee in bed every morning, and listened to my stories about the books I was reading. The problem was Henry's business required him to attend social events, and as his wife, I was expected to join him. These weren't just any parties. They were high society gatherings filled with people who had more money than some small countries. And honestly, I felt completely out of place every single time. The annual charity gala at the Riverside Country Club was no different. Henry had been talking about it for weeks, explaining how important it was for his business relationships. I remember standing in front of my closet that morning, staring at my clothes and feeling overwhelmed. Everything I owned seemed so plain compared to what these women would be wearing. I settled on a simple white sundress. Nothing fancy, just clean and comfortable. It was my favorite dress because it made me feel like myself. Henry kissed my forehead when he saw me and said I looked beautiful, but I could see the worry in his eyes. He knew how these events affected me. The country club was absolutely stunning. The poolside area had been transformed into something out of a magazine. There were elegant decorations everywhere, soft lighting, and waiters walking around with champagne glasses. The marble pool sparkled under the evening lights, and I remember thinking how peaceful it looked. I had no idea that same pool would become the center of my nightmare. As soon as we arrived, Henry was pulled into conversations with other businessmen. I understood this was work for him, not pleasure. I told him I'd be fine mingling on my own, though we both knew that was a lie. I found a quiet corner and watched as groups of women in designer gowns and sparkling jewelry chatted and laughed together. That's when I first noticed Carmen Rodriguez. She was impossible to miss. Tall, perfectly dressed in a red silk gown, with diamond earrings that probably cost more than my car. She was the wife of the country club president, and you could tell she knew it. She carried herself like royalty, and everyone around her seemed to hang on her every word. I was trying to stay invisible when Carmen's eyes found mine across the room. There was something in her gaze that made my stomach drop, a coldness that I'd never experienced before. She whispered something to the women around her, and they all turned to look at me. Their smiles weren't friendly. Carmen walked over to me with her group trailing behind her like a pack of followers. There was Patricia, a blonde woman with too much makeup, Monica, who kept adjusting her expensive necklace, and Stephanie, who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine, but had the warmest personality of a frozen fish. Well, Carmen said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. You must be Henry's new wife. I'm Carmen Rodriguez. My husband runs this club. She looked me up and down like she was inspecting a piece of furniture she might buy. That's an interesting dress choice for an event like this. I felt my cheeks burning. Thank you for organizing such a beautiful event, I managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. Patricia giggled. Did you get that dress from a department store clearance rack? It's so quaint. The other women laughed, and I felt like shrinking into the ground. I just prefer simple clothes, I said quietly, already regretting not staying home. Simple, Carmen repeated like she was tasting the word. How refreshing. Most of us here are so used to well quality. She gestured to her own gown. This little number is from Paris. Custom made, of course. I nodded, not sure what I was supposed to say to that. I glanced around hoping to catch Henry's eye, but he was deep in conversation across the room. I was completely on my own. Tell me, dear, Carmen continued. What exactly do you do besides being married? I mean, there was something sharp in her tone that made me nervous. I volunteer at the local library, I said, and I help at the animal shelter on weekends. The women exchanged looks, and I could practically see them trying not to laugh. How charitable of you, Monica said. I suppose everyone needs hobbies, though I have to wonder, Carmen said, stepping closer. What someone like Henry sees in this. She waved her hand at me dismissively. I mean, he could have anyone, someone who fits into our world. My heart started racing. I'd never been confronted so directly before. I should probably go find my husband, I said, trying to step away. But Carmen moved to block my path. Oh, don't be shy. We're just getting to know each other. After all, if you're going to be part of our social circle, we need to make sure you understand how things work here. Some people, Patricia chimed in, just don't belong in certain places. It's nothing personal. It's just reality. I felt tears starting to form in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of these women. I think you've made your point, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Carmen's smile turned cruel. Have I? Because I'm not sure you understand. This isn't some community center gathering, sweetheart. This is an exclusive event for exclusive people who matter. The crowd around us was starting to notice the conversation. I could see people turning to watch, some with curious expressions, others with what looked like anticipation. It was like they were waiting for a show. You know what I think, Carmen said loud enough for nearby guests to hear. I think some people are just charity cases themselves, playing dress up in a world that will never accept them. That was the moment I felt something break inside me. The humiliation was overwhelming, but underneath it was a growing anger. Who did this woman think she was? What gave her the right to talk to anyone this way? I took a deep breath. I may not have your money or your designer clothes, I said, my voice carrying further than I intended, but at least I have something you clearly lack. Basic human decency. Carmen's face went red. The fake sweetness disappeared completely. Excuse me, you heard me, I said, surprising myself with my boldness. Just because you have money doesn't give you the right to treat people like garbage. The crowd around us had grown larger. Some people looked uncomfortable, but others seemed to be enjoying the drama. I could hear whispers and see phones being raised to record what was happening. Carmen stepped even closer, her voice low and dangerous. You little nobody. You have no idea who you're talking to. I could have you thrown out of here with a single word. Then do it, I said, because I'd rather leave than stand here and let you insult me. What happened next felt like it happened in slow motion. Carmen's face twisted with rage, and she took another step toward me. We were standing near the edge of the pool area, and I remember noticing how the marble was slightly wet from the evening mist. You want to leave so badly. Carmen said, her voice filled with venom. Let me help you. She raised her hands, and for a second, I thought she was going to push me, but then she seemed to catch herself, probably remembering all the people watching. Instead, she took a step back and pretended to stumble, bumping into me hard. I lost my balance. Immediately, my feet slipped on the wet marble, and I felt myself falling backward. The world tilted and then I was crashing into the water. The pool was deeper than I expected and colder. The shock of it knocked the breath out of me and I went under completely. I'm not a strong swimmer. Actually, I'm barely a swimmer at all. And panic immediately set in. The water was over my head and I was sinking. But worse than the fear of drowning was the sound. From above, even underwater, I could hear the explosion of laughter. It was like the entire party had erupted in amusement at my expense. When I finally managed to surface, gasping and choking, the first thing I saw was Carmen's satisfied smile. My white dress had become completely see-through, clinging to me in the most embarrassing way possible. Water was streaming down my face, mixing with tears I couldn't hold back anymore. The laughter was deafening, not just from Carmen and her friends, but from dozens of guests who had gathered to watch the show. Oops, Carmen called out in a fake, innocent voice. So sorry, I'm so clumsy. Sometimes. She turned to the crowd with a theatrical shrug. I guess some people just can't handle their champagne. More laughter erupted. Someone helped pull me out of the pool, but I could barely stand. I was shaking, whether from cold, embarrassment, or rage, I couldn't tell. My hair was plastered to my head. My makeup was running down my face, and I felt more humiliated than I'd ever felt in my entire life. Carmen leaned down toward me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Maybe next time you'll think twice before trying to lecture your betters, she whispered, so only I could hear. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Quick, purposeful footsteps that seemed to cut through all the noise and laughter. The crowd began to quiet, and I turned to see Henry walking toward us. His face was completely calm, but there was something in his eyes that made my breath catch. I'd never seen him look like that before. He knelt down beside me without saying a word, wrapping his jacket around my shoulders. His hands were gentle as he helped me to my feet, but I could feel the tension radiating from him like heat from a fire. Are you hurt, darling? He asked softly, his voice so tender that fresh tears sprang to my eyes. I shook my head, not trusting myself to speak. Henry nodded and stood up slowly. The entire poolside had gone silent. Even Carmen seemed to sense that something had shifted. Henry pulled out his phone and dialed a number. When someone answered, his voice was calm and clear, but it carried across the silent crowd like a bell. Jonathan, it's Henry. I need you to cancel the Rodriguez construction contracts. All of them, effective immediately. He paused, listening. Yes, all 17 projects, the shopping center, the office building, everything. Carmen's face went white. Wait, what are you doing? She stammered. Henry didn't even look at her. He was already dialing another number. Patricia Martinez, he said when someone answered. This is Henry Blake. Your husband submitted a loan application to my bank last month. I'm calling to inform you that it's been denied. Patricia, who had been laughing just moments before, made a sound like she'd been punched, but we already put a deposit down on the new house. Henry's third call was to Monica. Ms. Chen, your boutique lease comes up for renewal next month. The building owner has decided not to renew. He paused. Yes, I am the building owner. You have 30 days. Monica started crying. Please, you can't do this. My business is everything to me. But Henry wasn't finished. Call after call, he systematically dismantled the lives of every woman who had participated in my humiliation. Stephanie's husband's job at one of Henry's companies gone. Another woman's membership to several Exclusive clubs that Henry had influence over cancelled, investment, opportunities, business partnerships, social connections. Henry pulled strings I didn't even know existed. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the most powerful man at the party methodically destroyed the social and financial lives of the women who had made the mistake of humiliating his wife. No one was laughing anymore. Carmen was shaking. Now, her perfect composure completely shattered. Please, she begged. It was just a joke. She slipped. It was an accident. Henry finally looked at her directly. His voice was quiet, but everyone could hear him clearly. My wife doesn't slip. She was pushed. And even if it had been an accident, the way you and your friends treated her before that was intentional cruelty. We can work this out, Carmen pleaded. My husband is the club president. We have influence, too. Henry smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant smile. Your husband was the club president. I just bought this club 20 minutes ago. One of the benefits of having money is being able to move quickly when necessary. Carmen's mouth fell open. Around us, I could hear gasps and whispers as people began to understand just how powerful Henry really was. He wasn't just wealthy. He was connected to everything and everyone that mattered in this city. Security will escort you out now, Henry continued calmly. Your membership has been revoked. All of your memberships. Actually, I've made some calls. 2 security guards appeared as if from nowhere and began walking toward Carmen and her friends. The women who had been so confident and cruel just minutes before were now crying and begging, but Henry had already turned away from them. He wrapped his arm around me and began leading me toward the exit. Let's go home, he said quietly. As we walked away, I could hear Carmen screaming behind us, her voice shrill with desperation. You can't do this. This is insane. Over one little push, Henry stopped and turned back to her one final time. It wasn't one little push. It was a pattern of cruelty that you've probably been displaying your entire life. The difference is that today you chose the wrong target. The ride home was quiet. I sat wrapped in Henry's jacket, still processing everything that had happened. Finally, I found my voice. I had no idea you could do all that, I said. Henry reached over and took my hand. I hoped you'd never have to see it. I prefer to keep business and personal life separate, but when someone hurts you, he trailed off, shaking his head. I'm sorry I wasn't there to stop it from happening in the first place. It's not your fault, I told him. I can't believe how cruel people can be. Carmen and her friends built their entire identities around looking down on others. Henry said they forgot that actions have consequences. They thought they were untouchable because of their money and social position. They learned tonight that there's always someone with more power. Over the next few weeks, I watched as the consequences of that night rippled through our social circle. Carmen's husband lost his position at the country club and struggled to find new business after Henry's influence spread through their industry. Their family ended up having to sell their mansion and move to a smaller house across town. Patricia and her husband lost their dream home and had to move in with her parents while they tried to rebuild their finances. Monica's boutique closed within a month, and she had to take a job at a department store. Stephanie's husband struggled to find new employment after being blacklisted from Henry's extensive network of businesses. But the social consequences were even more severe than the financial ones. Word spread quickly about what had happened at the charity gala. The story grew with each telling, and soon, everyone in our social circle knew exactly who these women really were. Underneath their designer clothes and fake smiles, Carmen tried to reach out to me several times, sending flowers and handwritten apology letters. She even showed up at our house once, begging Henry to reconsider his decisions. But Henry was unmoved. You showed your true character, he told her. These are just the consequences of your choices. As for Me, I learned something important that night. I had spent so much time feeling small and out of place in Henry's world, that I forgot I had value, too. I wasn't just some charity case who didn't belong. I was Henry's wife, his partner, and someone worthy of respect. I also learned that my quiet, gentle husband had a steel core that I'd never seen before. When someone he loved was threatened, he became a different person entirely. It was both terrifying and incredibly comforting to know that he would go to such lengths to protect me. The ironic thing is that after that night, I actually started to enjoy social events more. Word had spread about Henry's response to my humiliation, and suddenly, everyone treated me with a level of respect I'd never experienced before, not because I had changed, but because they understood that disrespecting meant facing consequences they couldn't imagine. Carmen's behavior that night revealed something ugly about the social world we moved in, but it also showed me that not everyone in that world was like her. Many people who witnessed what happened were genuinely appalled by her cruelty. Several women who had never spoken to me before went out of their way to introduce themselves and make me feel welcome at future events. Looking back now, I realize that night was a turning point for me. I stopped trying to shrink myself to fit into spaces where I felt unwelcome. Instead, I learned to stand tall and remember my worth. I may not have designer clothes or expensive jewelry, but I have something more valuable: integrity, kindness, and a husband who loves me enough to move mountains when someone tries to tear me down. Carmen learned the hard way that you never really know who you're dealing with when you choose to be cruel. She thought she was bullying some nobody who couldn't fight back. Instead, she discovered that sometimes the quietest person in the room is connected to the most powerful one. The pool incident became legendary in our social circle, a cautionary tale about the dangers of judging people by appearances and the swift justice that can follow acts of cruelty. People still talk about it at parties, usually in hushed, respectful tones when they think Henry and I aren't listening. But the real lesson isn't about power or revenge. It's about recognizing that everyone deserves basic human dignity, regardless of their background, their clothes, or how much money they have. Carmen forgot that fundamental truth, and it cost her everything she thought mattered. As for Henry and me, we're stronger than ever. That night showed me a side of him I'd never seen, his fierce protectiveness and unwavering loyalty. And it showed him that I could stand up for myself when pushed too far, even if I needed his help to make things right afterward. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Henry hadn't been there that night, if Carmen's cruelty had gone unchecked. But then I remember the strength I found in that moment when I decided to speak